So we are out in the woods right now. It's so beautiful out here. It is very hot, but the water is really cold, so it's really comfortable. So yeah. I wanted to do a video out here of all of my experiences with I don't know if it would be considered paranormal, but kind of unreal things that have happened in my life that I just wanted to share because I like watching these videos where people talk about experiences they've had. I guess you could call them paranormal experiences, but I'm not going to share the ones that were scary for me. I just wanted to share the really cool, warm ones, if that makes sense. So the first one I wanted to share was when I was very young, my grandmother, Marcia, passed away when I was, I want to say maybe 4 years old. And she had a lot of love for me when I was a little girl. She was a very, very good grandmother, granny for what I had, for that amount of years. Eddie, look, there's snails over here. There's a snail right here. Oh, he's in here. I put you back. I'm sorry. Okay, so I had a very, very good experience with my grandmother before she passed away. She was a very loving grandmother. She adored me. She made blankets for me, and she spent a lot of time with me, and I have very, very fond memories of her when I was that young. And she passed away tragically in a bad accident. And after she passed away, she didn't really go away from me. I didn't understand the concept of death because I was so young. And when I got older and I had realized what death really was, I was very confused because I remembered having interactions with her even after she had passed. We would go to my grandmother's house, whom was Marcia's mother. And I would see her dancing around the house and running through the house. She had long brown hair and she was wearing a dress, a white dress, and she would just dance around the house. And we lived in this house that was built in the 1800s. It was built in the 1700s, and then it had add-ons built in the 1800s, and then in the 1900s it had more add-ons, and then now the house has been burned down and turned into a school parking lot. But it was a very, very old house, and so there were lots of different rooms, and everything was kind of falling in and very old. But I just remember her running around this big house, and her room was in the back. And I remember asking my granny who the lady was. I was like, who is this lady then, you know? It was just a very odd experience seeing her. I mean, I remember when my grandparents on my mother's side would come over, I would see Marcia there too, and she would just be smiling and sitting with them. She was always wearing white, and she just had this bright yellow around her. I remember her standing in the doorway waving goodbye to me. And maybe I've mixed up memories from when she was alive, but I remember her always being there. I don't ever really remember losing her. So that's one small experience I had when I was younger that was very beautiful. Another is my family was sitting in this old house. A lot of these take place in this old house. That was where a majority of my experiences and childhood was. But my family, which my mother, my father, my uncle, my aunt, were sitting in the living room and talking, and it was late at night, and they remembered an orb floating up out of the room, just a blue orb. And it very, very badly scared my mom. She's very sensitive about that type of stuff, and my Uncle Troy just believed in this stuff and kind of brushed it off as, you know, God does magical things that are unexplainable and our mind doesn't really have to wrap around it. That was his sort of thinking about it. And then my dad just kind of didn't share that type of stuff, but it really frightened my mom. She's very open about a lot of this stuff, but when it came to actually experiencing this stuff, it really frightened her. But I found it extremely fascinating, even though I didn't see it, that they had saw something like that in our home after seeing my grandmother so many times there after she had passed on. Just thought it was very beautiful. There's some dragonflies fighting behind me. Or maybe they're not fighting. I'm trying to think of some more. When my grandmother, who's Marsha's mother, passed away, I remember she was having a cup of coffee in the living room, and my dad was very concerned with her. And my dad didn't typically get concerned about things, so I knew that it had to have been serious. And my grandmother had to go to the hospital, and when she went to the hospital, I remember when they were taking her out of the house, they took her in an ambulance, and I remember telling her, I was like, I love you, Granny, you know, it's gonna be okay. And when I was younger, I was very, very believing in, like, heaven and the beautiful after. And so I was like, you're going to a beautiful place, there's nothing to worry about. And she said that she loved me too. And I remember about a week later, because she stayed in the hospital for a while and I didn't get to see her because they were trying to keep the room clean. She wasn't allowed to have visitors. I remember I was walking on the playground with my friend and I told her, I was like, my grandmother just passed away. And I didn't feel shocked or anything. I just like had this sense of knowing. And I got home and my dad was really upset. And he took my family outside and we stood in the driveway, and I had already known. So I knew that he was going to announce that she had passed away, and he did, and everyone just started crying, and I just stood there, and I was like, I already knew. How did I already know? So I just thought that was fascinating. When my other grandmother passed away on my other side, I remember also just knowing, just like having that feeling of their separation from the earth. But it's weird because I still feel connected to them even though they've passed on. Because I dream of them and I see them in my dreams and I talk to them in my dreams. I don't know, maybe it's my mind's way of coping, but I just find it so fascinating that I'm able to hold these connections with them even though they've already passed on. And I'm not sure what I believe in. I mean, I know that there's a God, but I don't know why I'm able to feel connections with them even though they've passed on. They're not necessarily scary, but they're kind of off-putting. A couple of stories I wanted to share that my uncle had shared with us. Whether they're true or not, I do not know. And he has passed on, so I can't tell the truth. But I will share some of the stories that he told us about living in that house. One of the biggest ones that stick out for me is my uncle was outside working on the truck, and we had one of those old TVs. This is before I had lived there, so it was just my grandmother, my uncle, and his partner. But they had this old, like, CT TV. I don't know the name of it, but it's one of those box TVs with static. And my uncle was working on the truck, and my granny was, like, walking through the kitchen or the living room, wherever they had the TV set up, and she looked over at the TV, and the yard was the lining of the yard was filled with people. She said there were all types of people everywhere. And she was like, what is going on outside? And then she went outside to check on my uncle and see what was going on. Because there were all these people and he's just working on the truck like there is nobody in the yard. She goes out there and there's nobody out there. And so she's kind of, you know, what's going on? She asks my uncle to come in and they look at the TV together and there's all these people standing along the driveway and on the TV, like along the end of our driveway, which we had a huge like field and there was a fence around it and we had all these dogs. Like it was a pretty big area. And she saw all these people, all these different types of people, and after that she believed that our home was an area for a crossover for people to go to the other side after they've passed on. And so that's what I was always told when I was younger, is that it was an area for people to pass on and move on to the next. I just thought that was kind of interesting. My uncle said that in the mornings he would go and sit in the living room and have his cup of coffee and roll his cigarettes, and there would be this guy who would walk up the road every single day and stand next to the end of the driveway, and then he would just kind of fade away, and that he was carrying a case, like a briefcase, and he was wearing a suit. And he would just walk up the driveway every single day like clockwork, and then he'd disappear. Those ones I find interesting, but I don't know if my uncle was just playing around and trying to entertain us. But nonetheless, very cool. And my grandmother was very believing in that type of stuff, and she was religious, but she was able to read playing cards. Read them like tarot cards, but they were just playing cards. So I just thought that was interesting. She was very religious, though. We prayed and yeah, all of that stuff. So that's all that I'm going to share for now. If you guys like that type of stuff, tell me. And if you have your own stories that you want to share, you can comment them down below. I love it when I get feedback from you guys. And thank you to all the people who do like comment and say, you know, that they like my videos. I really do appreciate that. It makes me feel very good that you guys enjoy when I tell you stories. So yeah, I hope you guys have a good day, and you should go out and get some nature, get some sunlight.